As of the time of this recording, John Cena has 2 pro wrestling dates left. That being at Survivor Series at Petco Park in San Diego, California against Dominic Mysterio, and then December 13th at Saturday night's main event, which will be his final wrestling show ever. Now, in today's video, we are going to be looking at John Cena's top 10 greatest wrestling matches of all time. Now, I want to let it be known that this video is a tad bit biased, and it is to my own personal liking. And in today's video, we're going to be ranking these matches from worst to best. Now, I know everybody is going to have their own biased opinion on what they believe is going to be John Cena's greatest pro wrestling match, but I do feel like number one isn't necessarily a bias. So I ask that you guys stick around and stay tuned for what I feel like is number one. Now, if you guys are new, I ask that you like this video and also subscribe to the channel. You guys are definitely going to want to stay tuned and find out what number one actually is. The year was 2009, and truth be told, it was the year of Randy Orton. Randy Orton that year would go on to win the Royal Rumble, and he would also go on to have a huge match at WrestleMania 25 against Triple H. But it was later in the year where Randy Orton would find himself in a very, very divisive spot, I would say, where he would go up against John Cena at breaking point in an I Quit match. Now, this match would be for the WWE Championship, and coming into the match, Randy Orton was indeed the WWE Champion, and for the year that Randy Orton had, many people believed, hey, Randy Orton could really pull this match off. He could go out and he could be the winner. Could he be the one to make John Cena say, I quit? The never die attitude that John Cena has always brought to the ring has been something that made John Cena so special. And I'll be honest with you, here, there was no exception. John Cena and Randy Orton actually tore the house down. It was a great match. And a year where WWE was starting to lean a little more on the PG side, maybe not being as dark as we'd once seen with the Attitude Era, WWE chose to give us a very gruesome match, even without any shed of any blood. It was very insane, to be quite honest. But the ending of the match, seeing Randy Orton handcuffed, and you've seen John Cena put the STF in, and ultimately John Cena would get Randy Orton to say, I quit, which made a lot of sense because John Cena at the time was he was taking on that Superman role, the Super Cena as we called him, and he was really walking into that. And by God, this match in particular to me is one of my greatest, if not one of my favorites, because it really drove home the idea of just the good guy and the bad guy. As crazy as that sounds, because I know that's what wrestling is and that's what we make it out to be, but they really drove home that feeling. And Randy Orton and John Cena are great rivals, and that's why you've seen them have their match this year at Backlash because of all the work that they've done together. And this was truly no exception. This was an outstanding match, and that's why I have it coming in at the number 10 spot. With this next match, we are going to be following the same exact role of I Quit, but this time it'll be a much different opponent. That would be JBL, and this would be at Judgment Day 2005, where we seen John Cena take on JBL in an I Quit match. Now, one thing to remember about this match is this is following John Cena's first ever WWE Championship win. Crazy, right? 2005, John Cena won his first WWE Championship, but we'll get into that a little later. So, John Cena and JBL, they would go on and have a phenomenal I Quit match. And I mean, it was one for the books, to be quite honest. And this one was much more gruesome than the one that we previously talked about. I mean, there was blood legitimately everywhere. And by God, this was before Cena became Super Cena. You would see John Bradshaw Layfield ending up saying, I quit at the end of this match. And John Cena would still pull off his finishing maneuver. I want to say it was off the top of the limo onto the, I can't necessarily remember, and hopefully you guys can help me down in the comments section below, but he ended up hitting his finishing move even after JBL said I quit. Now, you have to remember, JBL was very upset because John Cena took the one thing that JBL loved, and that was his WWE Championship. At that time, JBL had been the longest reigning WWE Champion in the last 10 years. So from 1995 to 2005, JBL had the longest title run of that decade, which is insane to even think about. But he did. And John Cena would go on and beat JBL for that championship, which again, we'll dive into in a little bit. But This match really just signified that, hey, John Cena is going to be the next guy. And he's not going to be some type of transitional champion. He's here to stay, and he's here for the long run. We believe in him. The fans believe in him. And this is just us giving you the cherry on top, if you will, of what John Cena is going to be. So this match was very special. That's why I have it coming in at number 9. So John Cena has a great rival. In my personal opinion, he is his greatest rival, if you want me to be 100% honest. And that person is no other than Edge. John Cena and Edge in the year 2006 had a TLC match at Unforgiven. Now, this is another one of those matches where it signified who John Cena was and who John Cena was going to be. Now, I understand a lot of these are stipulation matches. These aren't just regular pro wrestling matches. No, these offered some type of stipulation, TLC being tables, ladders, and chairs. And by God, did they live up to the name. Now, obviously, this was so important because John Cena had never been in a TLC match before. He had never been in this type of what's the word that I'm looking for? He had never been in this type of like space, if you will. Now, John Cena and Edge tore the house down in this match. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, which just so happened to be Edge's hometown. And the previous month before that, John Cena and Edge had a match in Boston, Massachusetts, where you seen Edge defeat John Cena. But they would go on to have this match, a TLC match, which Edge was super familiar with. Now, these guys would go on and again tear the house down. But at the end of the match, you would see John Cena pick up Edge on the ladder, get him in the FU, and he would end up dropping Edge. I want to say it was through 2 or 3 tables. I know it was a lot of tables stacked up top. And Edge would end up taking that bunt, and John Cena would end up pulling the WWE Championship. Now, this one was just beyond special. It was really one of those cool moments, and it's actually really cool because I've actually seen Edge talk about this match where he said, like, oh, I wish, maybe I played more into that heel character role, and not had Toronto cheer me on, but Toronto really did. They loved Edge in this match, and rightfully so. In Boston, they loved John Cena in 2006 when they had their match there. This feud was just very special. Now, obviously, there's many more matches that people can go look at between John Cena and Edge, but this is one of the most memorable ones, in my personal opinion, and that's why I have it coming in at number 8. This match was very special. It really was. And I feel like I'd be criminal not to put it on here. Because it was supposed to be just once in a lifetime, but it wasn't. So the match that I'm referring to here is WrestleMania 28. It's John Cena versus The Rock. Now, they would start the promotion of this match a year prior, actually. It would follow WrestleMania 27, the night after. WrestleMania 27, The Rock actually helps The Miz defeat John Cena in the main event of WrestleMania. John Cena loses the WWE Championship. The night after, or a couple nights after, I can't necessarily remember, John Cena and The Rock, they would set up their match for 1 year later. It would be at WrestleMania 28, and it was very special. This match was once in a lifetime. It was a match that we never thought that we'd see. It was 2 generations going and taking on one another, and it was just one of those feel-good moments, if you will, for pro wrestling fans, because whether you're a new wrestling fan or an old wrestling fan, it doesn't really matter. You felt something when this match was announced. You knew the importance of it. Now, we would get to WrestleMania 28. Now, my personal opinion, the match wasn't necessarily to the standards that maybe I would have liked it to have been, but it still gave us that feeling. And ultimately, you had John Cena lose the match, which was a very questionable decision. But at the time, WWE had actually had some plans set in stone, especially on the build-up, where John Cena was essentially going to become a bad guy. And him losing that match ultimately could have led him down that path of darkness. But WWE ultimately didn't do that. But the reason why I mentioned this match in the first place is strictly because of the importance of the match. Now, as you guys see, I don't have it very high on the list, but it's also not very low. I do have it just kind of, somewhere in the middle because of the importance of it. That truly is it. Because I'm a wrestling fan at the end of the day, and I understand the importance of John Cena and The Rock. So that's why I have it coming in at number 7. This match, to me, again, we're talking about bias, is one of my favorite matches. And I'm talking about John Cena versus Shawn Michaels in Detroit, Michigan, WrestleMania 23. I have it coming in at number 6. And by God, this match was like 45 minutes of just pure pro wrestling. Shawn Michaels, Mr. Showstopper, Mr. WrestleMania, whatever you want to call him, would go on and have a phenomenal match against John Cena here. And you would see John Cena drive into this match. He would drive in a Ford Mustang, and I believe it was a 2007 Ford Mustang, because that was the year of it. They were obviously promoting it. Whatever the case is, it was awesome. He broke the glass. It was just one of the coolest entrances that I had seen personally. Now, the build up to this was phenomenal because you had John Cena and Shawn Michaels teaming up. And this is right at the time where Triple H actually got injured. WWE was doing the DX thing. They were trying to revive it, and they did for a little while. Then Triple H gets injured. Shawn Michaels doesn't necessarily have anything that he can do. But the one thing that he can do is go fight for the WWE Championship. Now, again, like I said, I want to say the match was like 43 to 45. I could be completely wrong, but it was somewhere in there. And by God, it was one of the best matches because it was just pure pro wrestling. If you are a pro wrestling fan, I ultimately believe if you have not seen this match, you are going to enjoy it for yourself because it was just so much fun to watch. And that WrestleMania itself was so very fun. It was their first time being back in a stadium since WrestleMania 3, which happened at the Pontiac Silverdome. So 20 years later, they go back into a huge stadium and they go out, they sell it out. John Cena is this big attraction. This is right at the height of John Cena being that number one guy. And ultimately, they gave that to us. So that's why I have it coming in at number 6. It really was just that. It was a great pro wrestling match. The build to WrestleMania 23, though, would start at the Royal Rumble in 2007. And there you would see John Cena face Umaga. Yes, the late, great Umaga. Many of you guys know Umaga is that big, scary guy who would often come on your TV as a kid, and he literally looked like this tribal just monster. It was so scary. Umaga used to scare me as a kid, for anybody who was wondering. So Umaga and John Cena, they would have this last man standing match. Now, this is where you start to see Cena become that Super Cena role, right? Things are starting to hit. He's kind of beating all those important pieces. Now, one of those important pieces was Umaga. Umaga was on a dominant role. I want to say, up until this point, he was undefeated. Now, John Cena would end up putting him in the STF, and he would ultimately get Umaga to choke out. He would do it with the ropes. It was so cool because I think Umaga in general, I think when I go back and I look at his work personally, I often forget how special he actually was because he was just that. He was special. And I think John Cena seen that in Umaga. Obviously, the WWE themselves did. Now, do I think that this match maybe should have gone a different direction? I believe that if it would have happened before or after WrestleMania, when I say before, I mean the road to WrestleMania. If it would have happened before or after, I believe that you could have had Umaga win this WWE Championship. As I said, with the last match between Shawn Michaels and John Cena, we know that John Cena was obviously their big main attraction, so WWE had to live up to that to get to WrestleMania. But ultimately, if you wanted to do it after or, beforehand, they easily could have, because Umaga could have easily held that championship, went on a very dominant run with it, and ultimately maybe you could have had him lose to John Cena on the build to WrestleMania. I don't know. Those are just things that I'm thinking of that you could have done. But again, that's neither here nor there. This happened in 2007. Just ultimately a very cool time. So John Cena and Umaga, I have them coming smack dab number 5. It was a great match. John Cena and RVD was very special. It was at ECW One Night Stand, and it's one of those matches that I firmly remember. Like, it's one that really sticks in my brain. It stands out. So at WrestleMania 22, RVD would win the Money in the Bank ladder match. Now, this match had previously been announced for the first time ever in 2005 at WrestleMania 21. And they did it again at WrestleMania 22. So you started to see a pattern that this was going to become, this huge stipulation that always happened at WWE WrestleMania, where you would see, a person go win this contract, and ultimately there would be a title match in their near future. So this would obviously go to somebody who WWE would become very high on, and somebody that they've seen potentially becoming their champion later down the line. As you guys know, this match is obviously still synonymous to this day. It has its own PLE. So RVD would win the Money in the Bank ladder match. And me personally, I remember vividly thinking to myself, like, oh my goodness, RVD won. Are they actually going to try and put this title on the guy, John Cena, or on RVD? It was weird because John Cena was a good guy. And all I can think of is, okay, you have the world championship, but at the time, I want to say Rey Mysterio had just won it. So they weren't going to do Rey Mysterio, but if you wanted to call back to their ECW days, maybe you could do it like that. Ultimately, WWE did not go that route. No, instead, they chose to go the John Cena route, and they chose to have RVD challenge him for it, and Paul Heyman would become a fixture. Now, it would later become the reason why RVD won it was because WWE was about to launch the new ECW on the Sci-Fi Network, and by God, WWE did a great job, on the build to it at least. Obviously, ECW, that's a different conversation. We could talk about that later down the line, but here it was just very, very special. Now, these two would go on to have a great match, and the end of the match, you would actually see Edge come out in like a motorcycle helmet, and he would cost John Cena the match. And it was one of those things where it was like, okay, Edge came out, he spears him through the table. Is RVD going to win? Is WWE really going to put the championship on RVD? Well, WWE did just that. RVD would go on, hit the 5-star frog splash, and he would ultimately become the new WWE champion. Now, later down the line, RVD would become the ECW champion along with the WWE champion. Now, further down the line, RVD would get caught, wellness policy stuff. He would end up getting suspended for 30 days. He would lose the championship. I want to say he lost it back to Cena, if I'm not mistaken. I can't necessarily remember off the top of my head. But he would end up dropping the title, I think, back to Cena or Edge, one of the two. And ultimately, RVD's career after that would never really be the same, which sucks very badly. But it's neither here nor there. This match was outstanding. It was awesome to see these two at ECW One Night Stand because it was such a special night. If WWE would have never brought back ECW, this would have been very special, I think. But they ultimately did. You got it. What it was. It was awesome. Love it. That's why I have it coming in at number 4. John Cena versus AJ Styles in 2017 at the Royal Rumble. It was amazing. It was probably John Cena's greatest pro wrestling match up until that point. John Cena and AJ Styles, I don't know what it was about those two, but they brought the best out in each other. A guy like AJ Styles who comes from this independent circuit, John Cena being the WWE guy, I don't know what it was, but these two, I feel like, even without saying it, they challenged each other to be the best versions of themselves. Now, this match would be for the WWE Championship. And it would be for John Cena to tie Ric Flair's record of a 16-time World Heavyweight Champion. And here you would see these guys put on a classic. They wouldn't step outside of the ring. They stayed in the ring the whole time. And you've seen John Cena do moves that you never even thought he could do. And keep in mind, this is in John Cena's later years. We're talking 2017. So John Cena is obviously winding down his career. He's doing movies. He's doing all of these things. And ultimately, you would see him go there and you would see him tear it up with AJ Styles. Now, ultimately, John Cena would win this match. He would become a 16-time world champion. But oftentimes, we're not talking about the championship win because that's not what mattered in that match. What really mattered in that match was how good of a pro wrestling match it actually was. That's why I have it coming in at number 3. Oh, yeah, buddy. We're following the regiment of AJ Styles. 2025 Crown Jewel John Cena, AJ Styles, Australia. Random Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. I remember it closely. John Cena and AJ Styles recreated what they did at the Royal Rumble, but this time they did it that much better. Here, it was on the retirement tour of John Cena's. You would see John Cena give AJ Styles this special announcement, the guy who defines total nonstop action, Mr. TNA himself, right? John Cena and AJ Styles stole this show. In fact, I think they stole the whole year. I'll be quite honest with you. It was the greatest pro wrestling match, in my personal opinion, inside of the WWE in 2025. John Cena and AJ Styles gave you everything you wanted in this match. It was a letter to pro wrestling, a love letter, if you will. So many finishing moves came out of there. Rey Mysterio, we've seen the tease there. Shawn Michaels, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, Frankie Kazarian, Bray Wyatt. Just so many names that they paid homage to. It was just a love letter to pro wrestling. And like I said, it was personally my, if I could put it at number 1, I think I would have. But just from how new it was, I was like, oh, I'll put it at number 2, because maybe in time I'll look back and still think that this is John Cena's greatest pro wrestling match. But right now, I do have it sitting at number 2. Crown Jewel, just a random Saturday morning in September. These guys just going out, tearing the house down. Such a special time, man. I know this is the one that everybody's been waiting for, and finally we've reached it. John Cena versus CM Punk, Money in the Bank 2011. Now, a lot of people I actually feel would have this match on their list. I really do, because if you don't have this match on your list, I think you're missing the whole idea of what John Cena was. John Cena was becoming the corporate guy. He was becoming the guy that WWE despised. Now, this would be where CM Punk called all of that out. The reason why this was so special is because you were starting to see cracks in what WWE was. It was a monopoly. There wasn't places that people could go out and wrestle and, get the big name. But CM Punk changed that. CM Punk dropped the pipe bomb promo where it was like 7 minutes long or 14 minutes long, I can't remember. And he would talk about all the things that were wrong with WWE, which felt criminal to do. Now, in this match, you would see John Cena stay true to himself because Vince McMahon was a part of this. CM Punk had threatened that if he won this match, he was going to walk away with the WWE Championship. He wasn't going to sign a new contract. Vince McMahon tried to play this like the 1997 Montreal Screwjob, where you seen Shawn Michaels technically screw over Bret Hart. And they tried to recreate that. Now, obviously, some reports would come out that CM Punk had actually re-signed with the company. And keep in mind, this is early days of wrestling internet and stuff like that. Not everybody was in the know, so only some people knew. But ultimately, word had gotten around that CM Punk had re-signed. But ultimately, that didn't take away from not everybody knowing, because not everybody did. So the shock factor was still there. And you would ultimately see these two have, up until that point, it was John Cena's best pro wrestling match. Up until that point, there had been nothing better. I know we talk about earlier matches and stuff like that, but there had been nothing actually better in the pro wrestling standpoint up until that point. CM Punk really brought the best out of John Cena. He always has. And I think that's why I look at, I know we talk about Edge, but I also think CM Punk could be one of, if not John Cena's greatest rival of all time. That's obviously arguable and up for debate. So, leave your comments down about who you think is actually John Cena's greatest rivals. I know that's another video for another time, but I'm just saying. So these guys would ultimately go on and tear the house down. It was so special. I loved every second of it. And that's why I have it coming in at number one.